Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Antoinette Kelly, and I'm sitting in until our chairperson comes. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Moore County Board of Elections. Can we please stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance? And once we do the Pledge of Allegiance, the chairperson. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this meeting of Moore County Board of Elections. Thank you for getting underway. We will have the roll call of members. Please state your name and whether you have any conflict of interest with any of the matters before us this afternoon.
Holly Powell, no conflict.
Martin Carpenter, no conflict.
Bob Howell, no conflict.
Antoinette Kelly, no conflict.
Susan T. Adams, no conflict.
Thank you. Are there any public comments this afternoon? If so, have you signed and carried?
Just one. We have Maurice Holland.
All right, thank you. Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Chairman Howell. I want to speak to,
Mr. Holland, I'm sorry. Mr. Holland,
yes.
right here, right here. Come, sir. Can you pick that, please?
Thank you, Chairman Howell, for recognizing me and giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to speak to item number 2, relocation of polling places, and specifically subsection B, East Aberdeen Precinct. I understand that there's some shortcomings with the East Aberdeen Precinct as far as the size of the building, also as far as the setbacks. If you go 50 feet from the front entrance, you're actually in the westbound lane of East Main Street. And if you do anything that's diagonally, you're going to have a situation where there are more desirable locations and other, those that are not as quick to be Johnny on the spot and put up their tent, they will feel like they're being shortchanged. But also, if you're going to talk about relocation of a polling place, I would like to reserve judgment as to where you want to relocate. And I want to throw out that the Crestline Fire Department, or Aberdeen Fire Department number 2, is an unsuitable location because of the situation of the cramped parking and also the fact that it's on NC 211 near the county line. So before there's any relocation, I would think that you would have to have sites or potential sites and then evaluate those. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I appreciate your comments. All right, we'll move on then to the regular agenda. First, the 2025-2026 budget proposal. Ms. Dixon.
Yes, so as everyone knows, with the poll workers worked very hard this year, and with all the new legislation coming up through the General Assembly and through the State Board, there's a lot of proposals that are going to be taking place that's going to increase the work not only for my staff, but also for the poll workers. And so just my tenure here, which makes 3 years now, there really hasn't been any significant and I think Ms. Holly and Tony can kind of agree with that, there hasn't really been any significant increases for our poll workers as far as their pay. And what we're trying to do, not only are we trying to retain poll workers, but we're also trying to increase our poll worker basis. And so I would like to increase the poll worker pay up for the early voting and for precinct, just to make it a little bit more desirable because of the increase in the workload. And I gave an explanation as to why and what that breakdown would be in the explanation, especially taking out one role specifically, which is the curbside attendant. That is a lot of work, doing the curbside attendant. Some days it's lax and some days it is. I was out there with them all day, trying to maintain that line with the curbside. I think a lot more people are using it more than they should. We're looking at ways to educate people exactly what the curbside drive-through is for, instead of just coming through because they see the line and they don't want to get into the line and they're just getting in the curbside, and that's not what it's for. And so looking at some counties that closely based to us, we're a little bit under the curve when it comes to our pay for our poll workers. And so we just wanted to match it just a little bit. So it was like basically a $25 raise. And we saved that money by doing a hybrid training class. So we were able to save money in one location to be able to give it to the poll workers in the payroll in that way. So it's
I have a question.
Ms. Holly, is your mic on?
Can you hear me? It's on.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. It was my understanding that at early voting locations, we're often moving people from position to position during the day. So,
Are you saying like rotating?
yes,
We don't.
you don't at all in early voting, because we used to.
We don't.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay, that was my concern, is if you're going to designate a salary for a particular position and you're going to rotate, you're never going to be able to keep up with who's where.
And the reason, so this time we hadn't been rotating because we're actually revamping some of the way that we're doing our early voting. I have some that they just like to do certain things. Now I have some that can float all over. When it comes to like auditing what a person is doing, in some cases, it's easier for that individual just to stick right there and just have a floater, like which is the site manager, or when I was over there, to float in between to relieve and then have them come back, because there was a lot of, not saying mistakes, but there was a lot of things that we kind of caught that my staff have been talking about on how we're going to rectify those issues, like having ATVs not signed or different things that we've noticed. So as far as the rotation, the floater person will rotate just to relieve that person, but to have that person there for that shift, because we split the shift, and that would be it now. So that's why only time a person really floats is if we're like, say we're short at the other location, they may go from location to location, but within that preset one-stop site, they would just do that job-specific job tasking.
So let me ask one other question. You're proposing $11 for greeters, DS200, and monitors / floaters. So are you saying the people that would float all around are going to get?
Which is what they get now.
Okay. But it sounds like being a floater is harder than doing some of the other jobs, because then you have to know all the jobs.
So The floater, well, and when they say floaters, they're not like doing like the computer, because most of my floaters, so when I say floater, like they're gonna be greeting, so when I say floater, then some of them are not doing like curbside. So when I mention floater, they're not doing curbside. Usually they don't touch curbside. It's usually like the monitoring, making sure like the pins, they're not going out the wrong door, because I had some going out the wrong door with a ballot. Like they're in the, making sure that they had their ID ready. They're mostly within a certain confine when I say floater.
Maybe it's a bad term to use.
Yes, it's that term. I wasn't sure, because I know I was floating. So, but when I mean floater, like they're checking to make sure that there's tables available for people to sit down, pins, making sure pins don't run out, making sure that people are actually okay. I had 2 incidents where a gentleman actually passed out, and they put a chair right there by the DS200. Certain things that we're going to be having to do. Coming out in the hallway, we had a gentleman that passed out in the middle of the hallway, just checking certain things to make sure that things are okay. So that type of floating, but not as far as job specific floating, but making sure that at the DS200, sometimes I love my little ladies or men, but sometimes they have a little hard hearing, and making sure when I'm beeping and beeping that they notice that the machine is beeping, certain things of that nature.
You just might want to clarify.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a couple of questions. One to go along with what Ms. Powell said there. If you've got somebody that's a greeter that's making $11 an hour, and suddenly you need that person to go over to the help desk and all, can't you, during the time period they're there, bump up $2 an hour? You're now working this job, so during this time period, we would give you the additional $2 to cover that position.
No, because most people who do help desk went to help desk training, so a greeter wouldn't know.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
so we really don't see anybody in that supposedly floater, quote unquote, category doing a different job that in fact requires a bigger salary.
Correct.
Okay, second question on the site manager, since we're gonna work all day long, or you can have 2 site managers per site, so like one would work one day, one the next?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
maybe they
they're
decide-
gonna rotate, yes.
Okay, that was my
Yeah.
question. I mean, if we suddenly go full blown and use every one, you got people working like 14 straight days, and that would get on you after a while. So I want to make sure we had somebody else
So
that
we're
could work into that.
recruiting, so this past election, we actually did recruiting, we actually did some training with some new people for site manager positions. We realized that when you have a site manager that's there the whole day, there's less mistakes instead of splitting up the shifts. So we are working on that, right? We have actually some site managers in mind to do that, yes.
That's good. As long as you got multiple, that one day one works, one day the next, I think that would make it a lot easier. And everybody. Okay,
Yes, sir, we do have that.
Any other questions for Ms. Dixon? Oh, and I might have misunderstood. You just say that the $11 rate is what those folks get paid now?
So everybody gets paid the $11 regardless of if they're curbside assistant, if they're help desk, if they're a greeter, if they are a DS200 monitor. Everybody gets paid the 11, and besides the site manager.
Right.
But like I said, when you have your help desk, that's extensive. I mean, you're there because, like you're saying, you're doing same-day registration, and that takes a bulk of your time with the same-day registration, doing the provisionals and things of that nature. What we were looking at when it comes to the check-in, we can do more check-in people if a person is checking in and you do your trades with your own ballot. So that way, if I have like all of us doing check-in with our tray of ballots, that's more people checking in now, instead of having somebody giving you a ballot behind you and writing your number in the front and then you having to explain. So we're getting rid of that person behind you now. And now we have people that we're training where they will choose their ballot, write the number themselves, explain it to them, and give the instructions now, because this person was supposed to be monitoring the ballot and putting the number on, and a lot of times the number wouldn't get on there. And we were having to catch it this way. So we were modifying some stuff this way. And then we would have some who, like myself, I could do help desk because, not everybody, but sometimes the help desk people would get backed up. So those who were more experienced we would have an overflow person for the help desk because it takes so much time. So the job, depending on the task, it's not fair to clump everybody in the same pay when they're doing more responsibilities. Help desk is a lot more responsibility. Curbside is a lot more responsibility because sometimes you're running out there 3 or 4 times because sometimes a person had to change their address and they didn't do it. So you got to go back in there, change their address to make sure they got the right ballot. Sometimes we had people who weren't registered and we would not like to do that in the curbside line. In some cases we did because there was no physical way for them to come into the building. And that takes a very long time when you're doing curbside and a same day registration outside. And so there was a lot of things that I noticed that just to make it a little bit more different with the pay, I broke it down a little bit.
Sure, I understand the concept of increased pay for more demanding positions. So I just wanted to clarify that about the $11 rate. So those folks, that would stay at 11, and it's in the other positions that you've indicated would go up, say, to 13 for help desk and check. And the site manager previously was 16, and so that would go to 20.
Because they're there all day. That's a long day.
I'm sure, I understand. I don't object to that at all. Just wanted to clarify where we have been and where we're going with that. My other question was to understand you to say that we would essentially cover those increases because of the money that we would save by consolidating training.
Yes.
Is that sort of a dollar per dollar? Is it that close, or just yes, we would recover some money from the training, or?
So basically the way we did it is we combined. So the way that the class was set up, we were able to combine it. So basically it was like Nick was able to combine the class.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't where you were having 2 separate classes for something and you paid them twice. So
Gotcha.
we were able to combine that class and make it one class. So that $25 is just, not saying hanging out there, but now I can direct it somewhere else.
Right, where it's, we do some more good. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, obviously, when we're talking about the budget, it depends on how many early voting sites you're gonna have. So obviously, this year is not a big election, so it's not as much of an issue. But in a big election year, we're talking about a significant increase in pay when we have more early, of course, we don't know how many days of early voting we're gonna have yet. So there's a lot of variables here.
Yes.
Well, back in the corporate world, I would put a little fudge factor in all of my budgets because I knew things weren't going to be exactly like I wanted them to be. There were always going to be things that pop up. And I'm assuming if we suddenly decided we had to have 4 early voting sites and only funded for 2 or even 3, we could go to the county commissioners and get some additional funding if needed. I would not think they would say no to that.
I don't know yet, but stick to that right here.
Pardon?
I said, I don't know yet, but stick to this right here. Don't do early voting yet. I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying because we don't know what that bill is going to do. But I mean, I get it. But if I do it now and everything is set because it's like a quiet time, you can build. By that time, you got 2 years to build up to it, and I'm already had it in already. Does that make sense?
Can this be done simply by a vote of this board?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, if the board agrees to it, then I just present the information to HR and it starts for the municipal and forward. It goes forward. Yeah.
Right. Holly asked a question that I had. Since there's another subcategory under budget proposal for board member increases. Do you think it would make more sense to have a separate motions and votes on the poll workers and then a separate one for board members, or wait until we have the whole?
It could be whole, it could be separate.
Hmm. So why not, okay. If there are no objections, why don't we have a motion on 1A for poll worker increases first of all?
I wondered whether you had feedback from poll workers regarding their pay and whether you think this would encourage more people to be poll workers?
No, that's just something that's just my thought. When I was working with them and when I was over there working with them and they were troopers and I didn't get a chance to get over there to Aberdeen as much. I think I only went over there twice, and just their willingness to tough it out. I mean, we were like, I know I was hazy eyed, and I mean, they just kept putting it out and putting it out and putting it out. And it was a lot of work from the time we got there in the morning to the time that we closed. And so it just seemed fair to me. That's just me. And so I just felt like that would be, now no one asked, no one was like, Tawana, you need to go to your board and say we can get some more money. No one asked that question. That was just something that I thought that should be done. So no one asked that.
Because it still seems really late to me.
I mean, but you got to do it in increments. You just can't bust out, Ms. Holly.
If we have the authority to approve it, why can't we?
Because the thing is, in some things you have to, it has to be, because when I was working, like I went yesterday and I worked with our auditing finance department, I guess that's what you call, and they do look at our budget and kind of make sure that, okay, this is what you had in this fiscal year and this is what you had in this fiscal year. And if it's like shot up high, we open that thing up and they're looking like, okay, why do you have this and why do you have that? And I have to give justification. So it can't be too outrageous. So if it's like close to something that I had before, it's easier to justify it than it's skyrocketed. And it's like, oh, what's going on right here? So each time, like maybe every 2 years or so, I can keep adding on to it and it's okay. But I don't know when, this seems like this has been this rate for a very long time now. It's like, oh, okay.
That could be one part of the justification if somebody asks you. And also, to go back to this step, if we are recovering funds that we would have spent during training because of the consolidated classes, it looks like overall that's not going to amount to a dramatic increase in the budget. So that what Ms. Powell might be suggesting by her question is, should it be even higher, especially if,
So basically I'm moving money from one spot and just really putting it somewhere else.
But
Yeah, no, I understand
don't
that.
think I understood when you were answering Bob's question. The bottom line is, by doing away with that one class, is that enough money that it's automatically going to pay for this increase, or it's enough money that it will just help make it easier to swallow?
I'm listening.
You're doing away with the one training class, and you said that money can go into increases. Is that enough money to pay for the increases, or that'll just help?
There's enough money to pay for it.
Okay,
Right.
that's what I
So-
didn't understand.
So we're still not asking for an increase in the overall budget as pertains to the administration of elections, it sounds like. Does it make sense to do that, especially if we are interested in attracting and retaining poll workers, so that we're sure that we will have enough?
I mean, I can attract as many poll workers as I want, but we always know that I'm always going to lose poll workers too. So it always balances itself out, but this helps though too. Does that make sense?
Well, I kind of agree with Ms. Powell, the chairman here, that I think that probably should be higher for the poll workers. And in the
But this
past,
is
we'll
just
go,
one stop though. You don't want this too high because then what happens is, and this is my thing. People see this as yes, this is hourly, and everybody just wants to do this. That's no news.
well, now but how much has it gone up for the people on election day?
Election day went up quite considerably because for the chief judge, it was just at 200 and we went up to 25. My thing is a lot of people look at early voting and then you have a lot of people who just wants to work early voting. And we're like, no, early voting, you got to do election day. So really where you want your increase to go up to is in election day, not just early voting, because everybody wants early voting. Everybody.
Because nobody wants to work that many hours in one
Exactly.
day and show up at the crack of dawn.
Yeah.
And 70% of the voters this last time were early voting and absentee votes.
Well, yeah, of course.
But I meant that, so with the real workload now, as we saw with those lines, in early voting is early voting.
Okay,
Election-
but that's not what I'm saying for my coworkers. I have people who always just assume, well, I'm just gonna work early voting. I'm like, no, you have to work election day. So if any increases were to really take place, I needed an election day.
Okay,
I mean, I know you're
Can you
focusing
tell us, you just said the chief judge was
200 and I
And
was,
what was the assistant?
assistant was 150,
150?
assistant judge,
And what was the assistant?
175, I'm sorry,
Right.
And what was the assistant?
125.
I'd like to see the help desk and check-in be $15 an hour.
So, I need a pen.
Now, are you concerned about having to justify this increase? Now, I don't think you'd have problems justifying it to the county commissioners to get additional money for elections when we're trying to make sure we can recruit enough people and good people to work. I just don't see there being a problem getting the additional money as long as we can show them what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I think the money's there if we're willing to ask for it and show that we really need it.
So what about, is the curbside assistant position okay, Ms. Hall?
What was that, 12?
That's 12.
12.
I don't know, what do y'all think?
And it needs to go up.
It should probably be 15.
That curbside assistant moves around a lot.
Well, and they have to know everything
Yeah.
kind of to do curbside.
But you want them the same as help desk and check-in?
Um,
Because most of the time the curbside person isn't on it. Well, we had to make a separate station for them, but
Well, certainly if they're doing check-in as a part of curbside,
usually you have one person that's actually
yeah.
doing it. So, but not everybody is on it.
I still think it can be a complicated position
So you want it
because
at
you have
15?
so many issues.
Okay. So you want it at 15?
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Now you're talking curbside, okay.
All right.
Curbside.
All right, let's go back
There
again.
hasn't been a motion or anything.
No, we're still-
You're still
Okay.
in
Still
discussion.
clear.
Curbside is 15, help desk and check-in 15. And the greeters, the DS200 monitors at 11, leave that at 11.
No, understood. I'm not sure why we shouldn't raise that $1 or so if we're raising the other rates.
Well, yeah, that's
What are they getting now?
11.
Give out-
Still-
And I don't think it's right not to raise it.
To what now?
13?
13 to the greeters, monitors, 15 with the help desk and check-in, and what did we say for the curbside, 15 as well?
15.
Okay,
Like that.
I think that's
The
reasonable.
greeters are now what?
13? I'm just
Greeters
pulling
are
a
at
number
13.
because it's sort of proportional to what the other position.
Help desk and check-in is 15. And it's proposed that early voting curbside assistant is 15.
Any more questions, tweaks?
Do we, before we make make a motion about poll workers. Do we want to discuss the election day rates or?
Looks
I
like
think we should.
If they're all going up 25,
For assistant judge, we're not 20.
I had a clarification.
I'm sorry, that should have been 170.
That's what I-
That was my apology.
It should be
It's
170.
170 was the prior rate, so they're all going
Right.
to
Thank you.
25.
So they did all go up.
25, okay.
Thanks.
I'm hoping that maybe with some of these numbers on election day, we can encourage some of our 17 and 18-year-old high school students and some of the junior college people to get involved if they, I think sometimes they get extra credit within the school system if they participate, and maybe, a little bit of extra money might help them want to do it too. I was surprised we didn't have as many people work on the general election this last time as we did before. I'm not sure what it's going to take to recruit them. I don't know if money's the answer or what. It'd be nice to have more of them work.
Now, this just starts off the base pay. This doesn't include like their training or their setting up or anything else. That just starts off that base pay right here.
Once again, put that into the budget, all that
That's
stuff.
that's already in the budget. I only did this part right here.
They get paid when they go to training.
Yeah.
Yes, I
So
know.
I'm just
As long
saying,
as we got that in the budget, if it's
That's
too
in the
much,
budget
more than what we
already.
think, then we go to the commissioners.
Marty must ask the commissioners for more money.
Trust me, for elections, to make sure the elections are going well, I do not see a problem getting money out of the commissioners for things like this. And since we're not talking, I don't think millions of dollars, are we here? I don't know how much extra we're talking. I guess that's the one thing. What's the delta between what we're paying right now and what we'd be paying for the same amount of people if we raise the money up?
well, this is the thing. If they don't work election day, they don't get paid anyway. So. If they don't, I'm just saying, if they don't, you can do everything that you're supposed to do, but if you don't show up for election day.
Yes, that's a different issue. That's what we had the discussion about, having supernumerary standing by that we're actually paying, but when we call them and tell them to come in, then they get themselves in there and they work.
Okay, but I just want to know if it's okay right here, so. Are
So,
you,
so let's think about that assistant. How many hours do you estimate they're there on election day?
actually working?
There. There,
Oh,
from 6 in the morning?
15.5. It's a minimum of 15.5 hour day.
Yeah. So
If it was,
that's not much an hour.
no, if it were $15, that would be, yeah.
That's just a flat fee, it's not by the hour.
I know it isn't, but you're asking them to work 15 and a half hours for $120 and $50.
$50. So that's down to $10 an hour.
Yeah, that's $10 an hour.
But they get to leave quicker than the assistant judge and judge.
In other words, they can work fewer hours and they get paid a little more per hour. I'm just saying, that's not an attractive remuneration for that many hours.
I've never seen numbers like these because these to me are off numbers. I've never had off numbers like this. So, like when I was in Hope County, my numbers didn't, like 195, I didn't have numbers like that. So when I was trying to make the numbers kind of mesh, it was always going to be off because, like I said, assistant was 125, then it was 170, then 2, and I was like, So I just was trying to add evenly to make it even all the way through. That's all I did, was just trying to make it even. So I just added 25. I wasn't trying, it was just trying to make it even.
You're trying to increase them each by the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, we should.
I get that. But I'm still saying, if you're trying to attract more assistants, it's not enough to make a difference.
Yeah, but we want to attract the right people. If you start throwing too much money at them, you're going to attract the wrong type of people. The people that come here are not doing it for the money. They do it for their civic.
Well, obviously, they're not doing that.
But that's saying,
that's
you're
true,
gonna, I think if you increase it too much, you're gonna attract the wrong type of person.
I don't
And
know
we've
what
had
happened
those.
about-
We've had those.
We're not talking about increasing it too much.
Well, I think 150 for an assistant is just fine. If you go and check with other counties.
That's,
How much did they pay in Cumberland County?
Yeah, but that's not comparable.
I'm just asking a question.
I don't know.
But again, what's the point if it's not comparable?
What do you mean it's not comparable? They do the same tasks.
Yeah, but they're a larger county. There's
You're
more
still-
people that pay
You're still
taxes.
talking
Their
about them
budget's
doing
bigger.
exactly the same tasks.
I understand that.
But I don't have that, I don't have Cumberland, I
We
didn't.
don't have Cumberland County's
I would use
budget.
like Harnett County.
Excuse me. I'm asking a question. and
I
still
wouldn't
have
have,
to answer.
I wouldn't have used Cumberland, I would have used like Harnett, because they would have been more comparable to us.
Okay, you said that you did look at some, you,
I would have used Harnett County, because they like 70, we're like 75, no, we're more than that. So I would have looked at them.
right, so at the beginning, I might have misunderstood this as well. I thought that you said that you had looked at some other counties.
Yeah, that's comparable to us. I
Right,
wouldn't-
I understand. So
Okay.
what were some of those other counties? Like,
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Cumberland County assistant rate is 130 per day. Judge rate 165, chief judge 210.
all right, thank you, Nick.
Go to, can you go to see what Harnett is for me?
So,
I don't have my phone with me. Here, can you check that, what, is it on the air? I'm sorry.
It's on auto.
Oh. I'm sorry. Is it on air conditioning?
Yeah, but it's at 73.
Am I the only one?
No.
Oh, okay.
So it appears you're looking at being equal to or higher than the average probably within the state on the county level. Is that a true statement?
I'm surprised Cumberland was that low.
Was that low?
Yeah. And this budget is for 1 year?
Because military.
Because not a lot of people go physically to the polls, so probably vote at
Well,
the
actually,
state level.
yeah.
That would be my thought process.
Because Cumberland County is a military. Did she have her?
Harnett County does not have the amounts posted on their website that I can find.
So tell me
Okay,
what
but-
Cumberland was again, please?
130, 165, or
210 for the two.
something like that, yeah. 130, 165, and 210. Training pay was the same, $25.
Okay. That's helpful, I think, to give us some perspective.
Marty had asked if this is just for 1 year.
Until we change it again.
Okay,
No, this stays in effect until you decide to change it, until we decide to change it again.
Okay.
But like I said, it's just been like this for quite some
Mhm.
time.
you got any more questions? Okay, then I move that we raise the early voting site manager rate to $20 an hour, that we make the early voting assistant, greeters, DS-20 operators, monitors, $13 an hour, help desk and check-in, $15 an hour, early voting curbside assistant, $15 an hour, and then on election day, the chief judge, $225 for the day, assistant judge, $195 for the day, and assistant, $150 for the day.
Is there a second? All right. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Appreciate the discussion and clarifications. Ms. Dixon, back to you for 1B.
So, now this was just me again. So I went back and looked at a spreadsheet all the way back to 2011, for the board member pay. And it has always been $25 per meeting for the board members. Excuse me, $35 for the chair. I even contacted Ms. Deanne, who is the Assistant Deputy HR Director. She even, because I wanted to see what other boards were doing as well. So the health department has a board, but they don't get paid. And I was like, that's not gonna fly here. So they have a board, but they don't get paid. It's in their budget to do so, but they just don't get paid. And then social services, they do the same thing. And then the tax board, equalization board, they get paid $25 per hour. Now, as a county board of elections through the 100 counties, that's not normally the case. Most county boards, sometimes they would either get a stipend or they get more of a fee for your pay. I didn't know that the county here taxes your, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I didn't know that. So I was looking into raising your meetings, your meetings per meeting. And to raise your meeting per meeting. And then, I'm sorry. And then for the mileage issue, so for mileage, the mileage really is supposed to be done, because I had an issue with this too. So because this is part of your duty, mileage from the house to here, according to the county policy, I'm not supposed to do. But like if you're going to a conference, I'm supposed to do. So I was like, oh, okay. So if I was to raise your meeting rate, that could cover your mileage. Does that make sense?
And so traveling from home to here and back would be now covered by the new increased daily rate,
Yeah.
instead of you having to track all that. And
then like if you do a conference, or because of when you do the short list for election day, that would be covered. But
okay,
raising your meeting rate would now cover your mileage per se. And so when I had spoke to my county manager, assistant county manager that's over my department, she was just like, speak it with your board, see what they decide, and then once you make that approval, then I can go ahead and do that increase for the board.
In long ago and far away, the previous director always set aside some money in the budget. I have no idea what it was earmarked, what the title of it was, but the board members were always given at the end of the year, especially at the end of the presidential election, for lack of a better term, a bonus for all the hours that they had put in. And it wasn't an hourly rate and it wasn't mileage, but it was like a $250 at the end of the year. I don't know the exact amounts, but that was the way that it was handled previously. And if you research the budgets and the way it was dispersed, you'll be able to see that's how it was done.
Well, I've been going back since 2011. I can't find it. I mean, I can have somebody else look. Because, and everything that I've looked at, it's always been, it's been called mileage in what I'm looking at, but I haven't seen anything else.
It was there.
Oh, okay, I believe you. I believe you. But this way, it will cover, like going up in your per meeting, that will cover you better. I just can't find, and like I said, Chris has helped me go through some stuff and trying to go through Munis and some of them little nooks and crannies. And then there's certain things I just can't look into because I don't have access to it too. So I would have to ask her what that was. Can you give me a time frame?
In the years,
What year? Give me a year. Like 2011, 12.
oh yeah.
But yeah, so that would cover, like I said, that would be how we would do it. Now, when I was surprised that's what, I thought we had more boards than that, and that's what they were doing, and I was like, oh. But that was my proposal for per meeting. Now, you may agree with it, you may not. That's up to y'all to discuss.
I've got two questions. Sorry, didn't mean to go first, but too late. One, similar to before, is this roughly, in your calculations, going to be roughly equivalent to the mileage compensation that you have been paying for board members? To change it from that to an increase in the per meeting rate, does that come out to be about even?
It's a little bit more.
A little bit more, okay. Second question, do you have any idea of how this compares to other comparable counties for their boards of election?
Well, I can tell you, like, when I was in, this is what I would pay my board when I was in Hoke. So that's why I said this was unusual that this is what y'all got for so long. Because like I said, I went back all the way to 2011. It's always been like this. And I was like, oh. Like I said, depending on, now bigger county, like Forsyth, Wake, because they have so much that they do. Of course, they pay a whole lot more because we meet as needed. That's why I was trying to kind of balance it out. Some do stipends where, I don't know why they do the stipend, but I don't know exactly what they do. Some do it, they meet on the regular, so it's a little bit more. So it all depends. Everybody's a little bit different.
Sure.
I think Tony kind of benefits more because she lives like right around the corner, so her mileage isn't as much. But this is a little bit, it covers more of your mileage and more of the meeting time frame than anything else.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Is there a motion to make these increases to board members' compensation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Relocation of polling places, Ms. Dixon.
So, Eastwood, okay, so if you would look at, there's a statistic sheet for Eastwood. Which is highlighted, okay, so Eastwood, East Aberdeen, I'm sorry, let me do East Aberdeen first. I'm sorry. So, because you have a picture for East Aberdeen. So with East Aberdeen, it is growing. It is the American Legion over there. And as Mr. Holland said, it has had some issues. Since I've been here, I have been like scouring that area, trying to look for a location that would be suitable for East Aberdeen. We did find a location that was actually, so the American Legion is right there on the corner, and this place is right down the street. And I have pictures to show the board, but I gotta sign in so everyone can see them. So right down the street from the American Legion is this location right here. Is a TV on?
It says this.
It said it lost the signal. Is it plugged in?
Good question.
It's working. It was working, but then I saw, but I don't see it turned on either. I'll be done. So this place is, right down the street from East Aberdeen. So basically the things that we look for is the parking. This is like the front, the curbside and everything of that nature. So basically, this is the map section. We do look at an area where campaigners can set up. That is one thing that I did look at. And it has plenty of spacing for the campaigners as well. I need to find, I can't, okay. This is the inside. This is the fellowship hall now. Plenty of space. As you know, with the East Aberdeen location, the spacing inside that spot was very small. No room inside to put any tables, no booths or anything of that nature. So,
What is this location?
so this is actually, if you look at, it's a church down the street on the corner. It's called
New Covenant.
thank you. It's called New Covenant. It's 210 North Pine Street. I can't get these pictures. They cut me out of these pictures, so I can't see. It had over 30 parking spaces, but we would designate one spot location just for the campaigners in the front, their own spot. That's the foyer. That's my car. See that picture right there?
Is this right next to a park?
Yes, right across the street is a park. Because, matter of fact, if you was to go up the street, you would come right across the street. You would actually be facing right across the street from the Aberdeen Parks and Rec. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? So here you could put. There's the curb. There's actually an awning for curbside. There's a place for where we could actually put tents at now for campaign for the campaigners now. I mean, their own little section where nobody would be jockeying for it.
Right, so we've got some sites where there has been room for campaigners to have tables, but
They can actually
but
have
not tents. But
this
here
one-
they can have tents.
tents. Yes, they can actually have their own tents and stuff like that.
As I look at the picture here, the 50 feet out, that kind of goes a little bit into the parking lot.
So the 50 feet would actually start by the front door. But like I said, we would be able to put, but there's parking very on the side and.
But it looks like the tents, if you wanted to be able to have the tents for people to walk past like they
But
normally do,
there's-
they're right there by those two shrubs, just on the other side of those.
Yeah,
Two
there's parking
shrubs.
there.
So they'd actually be on the parking lot itself. We'd,
Yeah, I would
say a
give
couple of
you that.
those parking spots then wouldn't be available. And if they're handicapped, then we'd indicate some others would become
But
handicapped.
the handicap, there's actually 3 spots. So curbside and handicap is separate. There's actually 3 spots where we could designate handicap with our handicap sign. And then curbside would actually go under the awning. So
Okay,
this way it will protect the poll workers if it's bad weather.
okay.
So that's what we would designate.
That's good.
But there's actually 3 parking spaces right here. And there's actually 2 ramps on both sides, for that. So that's what we would do.
What's the total parking? It doesn't look big.
So there's actually parking on the front, that whole, so all of that is parking on the side, all the way back there. So you have over 50 spots of parking.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. You
It
can
doesn't
park.
look like there's something.
Oh, no, it's a lot. It's actually 50 spots of parking on that side.
And you have talked with these people?
Yes, we went there this morning to speak with them. So there's 50 spots of parking. Like I said, the very front entrance, as soon as you come into the front door, you go to the left is where the fellowship hall is. It's right there. There's 2 bathrooms, right here. So even if campaigners had to come in to use the restroom, it doesn't interfere with the polling location, because it's a separate entranceway. They can actually use the restroom without interference. And I have pictures on the inside of it as well. There's a full kitchen for the poll workers to use as well, too, which they didn't have that. I was like, ooh. As well.
And what was their reaction when you talked to them?
They were very happy to, let us use it.
I'm sorry, they what?
They were very happy.
Well, we've never had anybody be very happy. I want to hear that
Yeah,
again.
they were very happy. They said anything that they, because the man was like, because they were too happy, because he was like, yeah, because my wife could come and bring cookies, and I was like, please don't come and bring them no snacks. I said, because then they would be spoiled, and then they would be thinking that I would have to do that. I said, they would be okay. So no, don't bring them nothing. So that whole area is for usage for them to use. They have tables in there. They said we could use, but we told them that most likely we would bring our own tables and things of that nature, because now we're realizing that more people want to sit down and take their time to mark the ballot, and so that's why we're looking for areas where we can put down more tables for people to sit down and mark the ballots. And so it was a nice flow rotation for people to come in and come out to mark the ballot.
So what procedures do we have to follow to change a polling place?
So basically, we do the ADA form, we have the pictures, we have the meeting. If the board agrees, we just send it up to the state board prior to the election, which is either 90 or 45 days. We notify those people in the precinct that their precinct has moved. Normally you have to do it once, but I like to do it twice. So I usually do it so many days out and then closer to the election, so that they can make sure that they're aware that we did move it. And then we change it into the system that this would be the new polling place location.
I don't know if we've done this in the past, but I imagine we could also put a sign at the previous site, in this
Yes,
case
we
at the
would.
American Legion. And
We would let them know and just put an arrow down the street that the new polling place location has moved. We would put a notice on the door that the polling place location has moved, an arrow pointing down, and then we will put one of the flags at the new location so that they know that this is where the new location is.
One,
Go ahead.
I know that we said in the agenda that we're discussing these 3. If we actually have a proposal for each of these 3, I'm wondering if we can put that out to the community and have another meeting where people who might want to comment on the proposed location could come. Because people who saw this on the agenda only know we're considering a relocation, but not where to.
And we're right.
So I'm wondering, have we ever done that in the past, or even if we haven't, could we do that?
We could, I'm not sure. Now help me out. I've never done that in the past. So, and not to say that we can't, but it's still up to the board to decide. Now.
The only reason I'm saying that is, we can see what you've presented, and we don't see an objection, but I'm not a voter in that precinct.
Mhm.
And so I would be more comfortable moving it or agreeing to a particular move to a particular location if the voters in that precinct had an opportunity to consider where we're talking about moving it to and provide us with input before we make a final decision.
Now, sometimes though, because now with the moves that I do, a lot of times, because I had one, she put an article, excuse me, for like Whispering Pines in the Pines paper. And a lot of times when it comes to like moving a precinct, it's just the fact that the numbers are becoming so big. If, which God forbid, if I ever had an election and all of those people voted, I have to be able to house all those people. And a lot of voters don't understand that. And so sometimes I have to get voters to understand, like, okay, if all of the people in this precinct ever showed up to vote, can that location house them? And they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And so a lot of people, like when it came to Whispering Pines, were at the fire station in the bay. And I'm like, we're not gonna make it. After a while, Whispering Pines, I think right now has 45. How many is on that sheet, Carrie? The numbers for Whispering Pines right now? Because I don't have. How many?
4715.
4715, 4,000. And I'm like, if 4,000 people were to ever come to the fire department wouldn't make it. And so I was thinking, okay, maybe we can go to the country club. I think they've had meetings there or something like that. One lady was like, I don't want to go there. And I'm like, okay, tell me why you don't want to go there. And she really couldn't tell me why. And I'm just like, okay, but you have to give me reasons as to why you don't want to go there. You just can't say, I don't want to go there. So I don't mind the public telling me, giving me, like Mr. Holland, his was perfect example. Now, I don't know where he was talking about because I didn't know where the Aberdeen whatever was at. But when he gave his description, that's the kind of stuff I need to hear. But if the public can tell me a good reason as to why,
Right.
yeah,
Sure.
that's fine. But just because, well, I don't like that location. I'm
Right, if
like,
anybody says that, then I think
You know,
we would
yeah.
take that into consideration when we made our.
Yeah,
but
But so for like Whispering Pines, it's 4,700, and God forbid if I ever have an election where they all show, So Whispering Pines, I'm still looking for Eastwood. I'm working on a location which is right across the street because Eastwood doesn't have a lot, but they just built that new subdivision right there at the crossroads. And we thought that those new apartments that are going up was going to be in the Whispering Pines area, and it isn't. It's in Eastwood. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So Eastwood just grew, and so we were looking for a new location. And so Eastwood doesn't have a lot out there, and so we're looking for a new location for Eastwood.
So
All
are you
right, so if
saying
it-
you only have a firm proposal for East Aberdeen?
Yeah, East Aberdeen is the only one that confirmed. I'm still working on Eastwood, but I was just letting the board know that Eastwood, we were looking at the Colby Presbyterian Church, which is right across the street.
We've been there before.
Have we been there? Well, they told me to do a proposal letter, and they would meet with their leadership on March the 9th to discuss it, and to see what
And what
happens.
was the location?
Colby.
Am I saying that right?
Colby.
Okay, Presbyterian Church. I just have to put a proposal letter together, and they'll meet on March the 9th, and I'll just wait and see what they say. Like I said, it's not a lot out there, so it's kind of hard to see what will happen. Whispering Pines, I'm still just kind of floating around, looking to see what's out there.
I understand where,
I'm sorry.
I understand where Ms. Powell's coming from, wanting some input from people, but theoretically, that's our job to look at the facility with the staff, analyze everything and say, is this going to be conducive to running an efficient election that everybody has a chance to participate in this precinct? And, like you commented, you may get off the wall comments, well, I just don't want to go there because I just don't want to go there. But we have to make the decision based on the parameters that we need to look at. But the other question is, are we getting to the point in some of these precincts that we may need to add a precinct that split a precinct into new precincts?
So
Is that a forbidden subject or what?
you, it's, you don't really, splitting precincts, yes, I hate splitting precincts. It's very hard, it's not hard to split precinct, you just, I don't want to do it. Because what happens when you split a precinct, one, where are you going to do it at? I mean, you have 26 precincts already. Most of your voter population is in the southern part. I'm already congested. Combining precincts is really what you want to do, because a lot, especially in the southern part, some of your precincts can maintain, like just for instance, the Fair Barn. Your Fair Barn is big enough to actually put another precinct in there, like the town hall. I don't know why they're close together. You could actually put 2 precincts in there, but that's another subject for another day.
Well, and if our early voting and absentee voting is going to stay at about 70%, then that means election day is just not going to have the population, and maybe there are precincts we could combine at that point in time. Because I traveled around on election day, just like I did during early voting, and election day there was just nobody in line anywhere.
Please don't use this last election for them numbers, because the push was to use early voting. I mean, that was just the thing. The push was to use early voting. And that's not to say that the next go around that's going to happen. Everything is always different. But in some cases, most counties usually try to combine precincts depending on, like rural counties, their precincts are so far, they try to combine them. I know Scotland County did. She has 9 precincts in Scotland County because she combined her precincts. Because one, you combine a precinct because you can't get people to work in a precinct. I had one precinct that I have that issue now. I have most of my people in that precinct who are out of precinct that come to that precinct to work. So in some of those issues, you combine the precinct, or you have some where the precincts are so stacked together, like we were talking about, Lord, that Ball Visitor Center and the fire department across from the airport. I would love to combine that one, but you got to find a location big enough to house both of those two. Those two should be combined. They shouldn't be split.
While you're mentioning the Ball Visitor Center, that is my precinct. I was the chief judge there. I had a voter, approach me recently to complain about the Ball Visitor Center as a site because there's no room for electioneers anymore. Because the way they did the plantings, where they used to set up the tents, you can't have tents there anymore.
That's right.
And they were told they couldn't use the parking lot because the parking lot's not big.
Yeah.
So people who electioneer there or try to electioneer there are very unhappy.
I believe.
And
that's another,
bring that to the board.
and that is another location that I'm looking for too, is to,
And I tried to explain to her what the requirements are for a location. It's not as simple as you think, finding something that meets all the requirements.
that's true. We were trying to see about doing something actually within the school, but with the school traffic, it's very hard. You can go a little bit, don't even touch the school because the school's like, no, you can go further down. But the problem is you get away from something that's tax supported and you go to more privately owned, and that's a little bit more difficult. So, but yeah, I understand that one is a little bit more difficult because they were trying to park in the curvature, and then God forbid when it gets very dark out there and somebody gets hit, I don't want to be responsible for that. But that is another area.
Well, the police come out and put up lights.
They do, but they were actually trying to even park where it looked like a dumpster area used to be something. But yeah, it's a little, that one is another area that I'm looking at as I drive through, and there's hardly anything out there. So I know that was another
But if you
thing.
could combine it with the fire department, that would make perfect, because they're hardly half a mile apart.
That one needs to be combined as well. So it's easier to combine and put them in a suitable place than splitting, because that causes issues. So you'll be seeing that one hopefully soon too.
All right. Let's dial back to the point that Holly brought up and that Marty has spoken to. And I understand the concerns about, that is the possibility of postponing a final decision on this for a couple of reasons. One, I think it could, a helpful piece of additional information could be the responses from the community, from the folks who vote in these precincts. Once we have, not that, there's a couple of things that could happen, of course, besides, which are beyond just, I don't want to vote there, or I don't want to make that change, and I'm not going to tell you why. I think that's, we would anticipate that there would be the substantive responses from members of the public who came and talked to that. If there, that's again, ultimately our decision. Basically, we're the ones who understand, along with the staff, what the requirements are. But I think that could be an additional helpful piece of information, particularly considering that we don't yet have, looks like we're close, but alternative sites for the other two precincts. And so once we had those in mind and could publicize those to the members of those precincts.
So are you trying to pause East Aberdeen until you have a public meeting with the public? Right?
Until we have a subsequent board meeting, prior to which we, as part of your, I don't know if it would necessarily have to be a major publicity campaign, but when you post in the regular course of events, the agenda and the meeting time, as you did for this meeting, on that agenda could include the current sites and the site that is that are proposed to change to, so that folks in those precincts who may have a concern for one reason or another would be able to come forward in the public comment section and make those known.
So when do you want to do that one? Because this one is used for the municipal this year. And I have to get a notice, I would like to notice them. Like, when would you want to have the public speak on that one then?
Well, you had sent me earlier the general statutes that have to do with those, that delineate the time frame during which by which you need to make those announcements. And for municipal elections, I think we have not an infinite amount of time, but we got some time. Without looking at a calendar and what your other concerns are, I don't have a specific date to recommend, other than as soon as we know what the other two proposed sites would be.
When's the next election?
November, but I have to know, so you would have to notify East Aberdeen voters, not 45?
Yeah.
About 45
45
days, but like I said, I like to do twice.
Sure.
But you're talking about allowing the public to speak prior to that 45 days.
Yeah, I think you're
Yes.
making this bigger than it
No,
is.
no.
We just want to have another meeting where we tell them in the agenda where we're proposing to move it, so that if they want to come to that meeting and speak publicly about that change, they have that
Yes,
opportunity.
I understand that. So that's why I'm asking you, when would you want to do that?
As soon as, we can do it anytime.
I guess I got to ask the question, what kind of input do you think we're going to get
I don't know.
that would make us change our minds based on the research you all have done, what we see on this site, the fact that it actually gives us more room to work? What kind of input would want to make us change our mind and then look for a new location?
You asking me or them?
Well, I'm just kind of in general, what kind of input do you think we're going to get from the public who really doesn't know much about this? It's going to be something, I just don't want that there there's too much traffic already. Those are the kind of comments we're probably going to get.
That's my home precinct. I vote there. There is no on-site parking. It's all on the street, or you have to park in the grass on the side of the building. There is no location for electioneering. I really can't see the community being opposed to change.
You're talking about the current location.
Yeah,
East
it's
Avenue.
not a good location.
It's so bad.
Right, no,
Yeah.
I think we agree.
I can't see them being opposed to the change and having much input because A, there's not a lot of other options within that area. And B, it's just not a great location to begin with. I mean, there was 6 people in line and that line was out the door.
Right, I don't think there's an objection to, or to changing from its current location.
No, I just don't think you're gonna get a lot of community input telling you otherwise. That we should move it.
We won't get any if we don't get
We
an
don't know.
opportunity.
And I know, well, it might seem tangential, but I think it's a relevant related topic. And Tawana, you mentioned, so this is a church, and you mentioned the other alternative for a possible Coley Presbyterian is a church. And you alluded to the fact that there can be challenges when we move to a private location rather than a government location. And there have been concerns raised in the past for at least one precinct that I'm aware of, because it happens to be mine, going back to days long before I was a member of this board, of concerns about that location, a location being strongly associated with a particular political position that could be less than welcoming for certain voters. So there could be objections from the community or otherwise to, and I understand that, you know, I haven't been out scouring the neighborhoods to try to locate another site, but I know there have been concerns raised in the past about churches, whether it is about a religious / political position, or and there's something that I remember from the fall about a challenge that we ran into because it was private property and we couldn't dictate to them a particular policy. And without going back to get the details, I'm not going to bring it up in this meeting. But that's an example of a concern that could be raised. I'm not making the decision clearly, but at least a partial answer to Mr. Carpenter's question.
So the only one we're really considering today, if we were to take action, is Aberdeen. You do not have sites for the other 2.
Correct.
So we're going to have another meeting anyway, once you have those sites put together.
Once I hear back from Eastwood, yeah. But like I said, Whispering Pines, I'm just letting you know that I'm considering that one to be moved to find a bigger spot because of that. It's in the fire bay.
Well, I guess if we're going to have another meeting anyway to cover the other 2, we could include the Aberdeen and get the word out there that if you want to comment on any one of these 3, then that becomes the comment period. And then we have 3 to vote on at that point in time, because you'll have given us 3 sites that you've researched and you say these are the best sites to go to.
Right.
That's up to us to make the decision.
It is. So I guess.
It's not up to Tawana. So
No, I agree. So it looks like what I would, as chair, I would entertain a motion to table item 2 for relocation of polling places until such time. Well, you've heard me talking, so since I'm asking for a motion, I'll let whoever wants to make such a motion to speak up. If anyone does.
I'll make a motion that we table the relocation of the polling place for Eastwood, East Aberdeen, and Whispering Pines until the staff of the Board of Elections has identified candidates for all 3 places, and we can notice that in a subsequent agenda and schedule that meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion?
I think it would be our due diligence betwixt this meeting and the next meeting for all of us to go by the East Aberdeen and look at it ourselves before we come back to make a vote.
In fact, I think that once the directors come up with 2 other locations for these other 2 precincts, that we do the same thing. I think we're agreed that with the director, that we have to relocate these 3 precincts at this time. That's a given. It's only a matter of where they get relocated to.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's a good suggestion.
Does that sit with you, Madam Director?
You want to go out?
I'm saying that we agree that with you, that we have to relocate these 3 precincts. The current locations are not good.
Okay.
And that once you've identified the 2 other locations, I agree that we ought to go look at it on our own time, however we want to do it, go look at those locations, see why you've chosen them, what we think of them visually as well. Don't have to go inside necessarily, but from the outside for the parking. And then when we come here, we've actually have something more to base our decision on.
I mean, to be honest, I like to go inside.
Well, and if we can get inside, that's fine too.
If we're gonna go see them, we should see
And if we can
inside.
get inside, which means, I guess we go as a group or go 2 and 2 and 1 to avoid any problems.
And we want that man to know so he can have his wife have some cookies there.
For sure. All right. So, and my understanding is this is part of the discussion. This is not to be
Yeah, there was a
incorporated
discussion.
into the
No, that
motion.
was
So I understand.
discussion.
Got it. And I agree. I think that's a good idea. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of tabling this part of the agenda to a future meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes. Thank you very much. Is there any further business from the director or anything on the board? All right, in that case, we are adjourned, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out today. Keep your eyes on the email and find out when this next meeting is going to be.
And pay attention.